Yes, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cannon Podcast. We are back with another instant reaction. As you can see, it is kind of coming from the depths of my car. My internet has gone wonky, much like the end of that game. I'm joined by Forder Mate. How you doing? Are you good?
I've been better. I'm
Yeah,
wearing black for a reason today.
we're
So,
all we're all in mourning. I think it was a really difficult game to kind of process for me. To be honest with you, I think when you have a look at it between both halves, maybe on the kind of on the scale of maybe the match, a draw seemed fair in terms of what both teams had. I felt that we had the better chances
mhm.
ultimately in the second half, and I felt a major frustration of mine was the fact that we just couldn't push for a winner. We couldn't find something. There was a tempo problem for me. I feel like people sat there. There really wasn't a lot of urgency in terms of us moving the ball from back to front with any effective progression. And I just feel like when you sit there and you miss some pretty clear chances, it's frustrating. There was moments in this game that I feel like we really could have capitalized on some of our chances. We just weren't quite there. And I think for the most part, when you have a look at kind of what Chelsea had to do, I think they played well in moments, but I never really felt ultimately very stressed, more frustrated at what our in possession play was. What are your gut reactions to kind of overall in the match?
Ah, I'm so deflated. I put out a tweet straight after saying just words don't express how deflated I am. It wasn't it wasn't a type of game where I felt nervous during it. It was I think Alex tweeted during the halftime saying, I can't watch the game. How are Arsenal playing? And I said, we're actually playing in a much more positive manner. We're
Yeah.
kind of taking control of the game. However, Chelsea at every opportunity were jumping on our mistakes. And that was my only concern. We kept Cole Palmer very quiet. I think Neto on the day was probably the one player that looked like he was going to cause us problems and did inevitably. But it was a long game, wasn't it? And maybe it's the circumstances as well as, how we played and the lack of urgency in attack. But yeah, I just feel deflated, mate.
You know what? I think what's crushing is when you have a look at this game in isolation, you could stomach a draw at Stamford
Yeah.
Bridge. The way that we were playing, the performance in general, I think in isolation, you can stomach something like that. But part of the problem is putting this in the context of the form, putting this in the context in terms of the points dropped already at this point in the season and trying to project about where we want to be. That seems to be something that's a little bit more frustrating to take in. And I think when you're looking at the performance, one of the frustrations for me is Cole Palmer being able to find the blindside run off Partey pretty much all match. I don't think he was defending that channel well at all. And I think that he was really struggling in terms of controlling that area. But then conversely, I felt like Colwell and Cucurella were stressed
Yeah.
constantly during that match, and we didn't exploit that enough for me. I mean, there was definitely times that I feel like we could have gone in behind that channel a lot more than we did. But Cucurella was resulting to really fouling early and quick. And I just don't think that we did a good enough job about isolating ourselves on the right hand side. So it's a major frustration. It really is. And you're starting to look for who can step up in these moments. The one thing is I felt immediately our press and our organization looked a lot better with Martin Odegaard in. Clearly somebody that I don't think was fit, but in terms of that communication and that reliability, the team seemed sturdier in terms of what they were doing out of possession. There was definitely a lot more coordination of our press. And so I felt like we were solid in moments. But it's a really frustrating night, isn't it? Because I think you're sat there ruining missed opportunities. You're sat there ruining kind of I don't know, ruining what could have been a very, very good performance that's capped off with what I felt like could have been a 3 points. But in terms of you, mate, first half goes 0-0. Balance of play. Where did you feel that Arsenal were in terms of the match in the first half? Did you feel like we had the better of the couple points, or where was your head at? And kind of after that first 45.
First 45, I felt like we were kind of good for a win. That's how I felt the game was kind of playing out in terms of narrative. We obviously had the goal disallowed from Havertz, which was a fantastic ball from Rice, may I say. It
Yeah,
was an absolutely wonderful free kick, very well, quick thinking. And Havertz did it amazingly well to finish that, although obviously it wasn't given in the end. But that kind of gave me hope. And I do wonder how that played out in the players' minds. It's really interesting how you get these opportunities, you score, and how that can raise a team's performance. Us having that disallowed, I wonder if that did kind of have that overall feeling of, I mentioned being deflated. Did
Yeah.
it feel like to them like, oh, it's going to be another one of those days? We had the Martinelli one on the far post. There were so many opportunities, and I felt each time Chelsea had an opportunity, it was from a forced error. It was, well, quite often an unforced error, in fact. And it was just, it wasn't an entirely like a terrible performance. It wasn't completely disjointed, but I did feel that the attack kind of left. It was lacking some impetus. It was lacking some drive. Odegaard changed it. I think today, he got 4 big chances created, something like that. Yeah, 4 chances, twice as many as any other player on the pitch. And I think it really did show that we've missed him. We've missed him in the
Yeah.
press. We've missed him for chances. The second half was slightly different for him, but yeah, for the first half, I think he was really, really sharp.
Yeah, he definitely gave the team stability, I think, ultimately, and a level of trust about they felt confident in terms of where to stand. The real frustrating for me is I feel even Odegaard, in terms of his performance, I thought he tired towards the end of the first half, but really from minute 70, I would almost argue he really started to click, and there was generating some really good moments for us, and I think the first half, I probably left myself a little bit more frustrated, but hopeful in the sense that there's another 45 that we can really turn the screw at this moment. So I
Yeah,
felt
completely agree.
very cagey performance. I don't know if any team necessarily put themselves out in front, but I did think that we had the better chances. You talk about that Martinelli miss. I don't think we can escape it. And Martinelli's been a debate kind of in the fan base, just generally speaking. But mate, I think 2 things can be true. One, we don't give that environment and that system really enough space to thrive, but he has to do better in those individual moments. I mean, for me, that miss is pretty shambolic. I mean, when you see it, and especially on the replay, I think it's worse on replay, to be honest with you. He just shoots it right at Sanchez, and I think he just got to go low and hard across the face of goal, and anything along those lines, you're sitting there taking a goal at that point. And then I think I start to ask myself questions in terms of where is the blame? Like, if that's the one chance he's getting in the match, is that fair? And I think on one hand, I'm just sitting there bemoaning the fact that, listen, it's not good enough, whether it's 1 chance, 2 chance, or 3 chance, when you're in those positions to score against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, where you're not going to get a ton of chances, by the way, period. You've got to take them. And we were taking those chances. And that's what led to our brilliant top 6 form last season. And that's really been the difference in this season. And you got to sit there and you got to have some sympathy for the fact he's not getting in those positions enough. We're not supporting him enough. But when you're there, you've got to stand tall in a sense. And I don't know if he necessarily is. And that's really the frustration that I'm sitting there having after that chance, after that moment where I'm sitting there saying, look, I want to defend you. There's things that we can do better to help you. But I don't know if you're helping yourself in those moments. You've got to sit there and test the keeper. Don't go right at him. And I mean, it's not too much to ask, I think, from that sense. So it's a real frustrating point in the first half. And I think beyond that, we kind of restricted Cole Palmer to very minimal touches in the first half. There was that one pop shot in, I think, 20 yards within like the first 2 minutes where Cole Palmer does a brilliant job to create space. But then other than that, I actually felt Madueke maybe had the best of the chances in terms of the first half and having some space with Timber. But other than that, I think the first half, as far as Chelsea went, the chances were pretty limited. Like, where's your head at it in terms of how we were able to maybe shore up out of possession, which is not something we've seen in the last couple games with Arsenal?
No, it was we kind of touched on it earlier about Odegaard. I thought it was really interesting, the orchestration that he demands from the players. There were certain times where he was telling them not to press, which was really interesting. I saw a few times to essentially just push over towards the left-hand side with Martinelli, and then kind of reshuffle, reorganize, and then press again, which ironically I want to talk about for the Neto goal. But yeah, it was so much better. It was a clearer plan. It was players. I always talk about Odegaard as Arteta's voice on the pitch. And I think it was so clear that we just had a plan. We understood where people's roles were, although there were, slight slippages at times.
Yeah.
But it was like looking at the old Arsenal, and it's interesting looking at a narrative. You could kind of go along the route of we're still undefeated against Big Six clubs since the beginning of last year, or you could look at it in terms of it's the same amount of points dropped from winning positions in the last 11 games
Yeah.
as we did for the whole of the previous seasons. So right now, I think it is this whole thing of narrative. I'm in the camp of, I don't feel that we're still opening up that left-hand side. I feel that Martinelli quite a lot of the time could have been beating his man on the outside. And when he wasn't, it was one of those occasions where you were thinking, okay, do something different, show us something different, enter the box in a different manner. That shot we just talked about, I think was a 0.28 XG. His finishing was a 0.18 for XGOT. So for that, it just speaks volumes about his finishing and his confidence is finishing at the moment. Lo and behold, later on he did a lot better, but it's
On a more
still
difficult chance, ironically, going near post.
yeah, much more difficult.
And you know what the frustrating thing is? I mean, people talk about this idea that he's got this head down dribbling idea. And the frustrating thing is I thought he was really brilliant in terms of the awareness where Sanchez was. I mean, to be head up in that situation and make a quick decision to go near post is the type of instinctual finishing that led people to say he was one of, if not our best finishers last year. And when you sit there and you look at that, it's there in moments. It's about coaxing that instinctual finish back. And I think he's just second guessing himself. There's definitely a moment
100%.
of kind of overthought here because you have the ball, you've got to put your foot through it. And I think he makes that decision last year. You look at there's got to be people there thinking 22-23 Martinelli is burying that chance on the transition. And in fact, it kind of strikes me back to that Liverpool game in which we really strike early and he gets that chance. I'm sitting there thinking we've got to get that guy back. And that I think is going to help us in terms of opening things up on the right. And we'll move on to kind of the second half, just broadly speaking, which I thought we actually performed a lot better in the first half, at least in the last 10 to 15 minutes. My one frustration is I felt that the passing was slow. It was, a little bit almost as though that they felt they had the rest of the 90 minutes to really affect play. And you're sitting there thinking, come on, guys, like we've got to push the tempo here. And, it's really funny. I was sitting here with my fiance. We were kind of watching the match a bit and, she's going like, why can't they push the ball forward? And, it's just, it's a frustration. And I don't think you need to be a super tactical to understand that, I think our in possession play was slow, maybe a little bit delayed. But maybe the one guiding light that I thought was really bright was Mikel Merino. And I wanted to highlight him a little bit. I thought that his cameo really opened the match in terms of giving us something that we weren't seeing, especially in the final third. And I think Martin Odegaard at the same time also opened up around the 70th minute mark. So for you, cagey start to the second half, frustrating, I think, but then we started to be a little bit brighter in the 70th minute. What do you make of Mikel Merino's kind of cameo in general?
The beginning of that cameo, I had my hands over my face. He went very close in a couple of chances, and I thought, oh, it's going to be one of those days. And he's been slightly maligned from what I've seen online. For a player that's played very few minutes, has had an injury at the beginning of his career at Arsenal, and we have to kind of remember he's not only adjusting to a completely different league, a different system. He's in one of the most difficult roles in our system as well. But from then, he was unbelievable. His retention of the ball was so good. And it was interesting that in the first half, I kept on seeing Timber kind of taking up those left channel spaces, kind of in that left 8 role. As soon as Merino was introduced, Timber kind of became a more, I'm going to use Rohan's, a nominal like fullback here. And it changed the dynamics. I think it allowed Odegaard to kind of push up further. I saw him kind of picking up different positions as well. Merino sometimes coming towards the right-hand side, and then Odegaard moving more inside and more central rather than to the usual zones that we see him in. But he was fantastic.
Yeah, and you know what? It makes me very excited about the partnership for what Merino and Odegaard can do. And I think they complement each other so well. And it's really annoying that we've been robbed of that relationship, generally speaking, because I think they'll make both of each other better. And then I think once Merino was growing into the game, we then ended up losing Rice and Saka. And so the thrust of that team, again, at some point, right? At some point, you've got to sit there and say, you're the makers of your own destiny. And, for as much as we're losing people, it's frustrating, but we've got to find a way. But factually, you're losing the thrust of your team there. Declan Rice, who I thought was pushing through the pain barrier. I don't know if he was amazing, but he was definitely doing some brilliant stuff in the press where Thomas Partey maybe lacked out of possession. Declan was really picking up the slack in that sense and really making sure to stop and snuff kind of transitions. And we lose him. And then we lose our one boy who I felt, Cucurella, could do nothing but foul him early. And it was ridiculous that he was getting away with those early fouls. It was so poor. And I think that, to lose him and to replace it with Gabriel Jesus, who I'm sitting there thinking, okay, we're really going to lose that battle. That battle with Cucurella really was the match for me. And I don't think what we didn't do enough of was floating that ball over the top on the blind side of Cucurella. We did it once or twice with Thomas Partey, as well as Ben White. The pass was bad, the execution was bad, but the idea was good. And I felt that channel had to be something that we exploited a little bit better. So maybe we can go to kind of individuals, mate. And before we do, I'm just going to kind of show some of the super chats because we really like you. Thanks, guys, by the way, for sticking with us. I know it's a really difficult kind of day, match, and also stream. Much like the morning here, I'm in my car, so we appreciate you guys sticking with us here. Really, first, Nathan Piper, thank you for your super chat. Passing is routine. The center mids need long ball training. It's really interesting. Definitely been using the long ball a lot more recently. But I think that our execution, it's weird. We've got players that can do it. But I think maybe our short passing between the lines is something that has really frustrated me in the last couple of games, especially going from the middle third to the final third. And I think we could do a little bit better there. How about for you, mate? Do you think, in terms of some of the long passing, what did you make of the passing performance in midfield?
It's interesting they're saying the centre midfielders. I saw Saliba actually pull off some lovely passes today. His performance is actually quite underrated, I think, from what I've seen. But again, that Partey seems to be the only one really trying to break lines a lot of the time. And it can be frustrating because when it doesn't come off, then, you're instantly in that position of retreating. But yeah, maybe we do need to. But again, as you said, short passes between the lines is one of the things we've got to work on. We really do. It's so frustrating at the moment.
Yeah, and thank you, Billy Pryor, again for your super chat. In terms of, you can make an argument that we're playing with 4 center backs and 2 sixes, but Marino comes on and he's being progressive, but just missing something going forward. And I think the irony is you look at a Mikel Marino and he gives you that kind of DM frame, but ironically, he comes alive for me a lot more in the middle third to the final third. Getting us from that zone into the final third is something that he actually excels at. And I think he's a lot more ponderous and deep midfield zones. He may have the frame of 6'8", but I think he performs much more like an 8 than people think. And I think that's the issue. He's looked ponderous when he's had to stay deep, stay in the pivot. But when he is high in receiving, he is free to make those runs. He is free to receive in those areas. He makes good decisions, and we don't make good enough decisions going from the middle third to the final third. And so we need to find him in those zones. We can't be asking him to stay deep. And really, we do miss that kind of stretch on the overlap. I really don't want to, not highlight what Calafiori has already missed. It seems like that reliance in terms of being able to open up that left-hand side fluidly is reliant on waiting for him to come back, and it's super frustrating. Here, Billy Pryor, again, thanks, mate, for your super chat again. Also been screaming for Nelly to go near post. So, it's a day of frustration, ultimately, I think, as a whole. Definitely frustrating in terms of where we're at in terms of the table. Definitely frustrating in terms of where this leaves us as we look towards an international break. I'm really excited to maybe watch that back, see what Mikel Marino and Odegaard gives us, because I think that access to central zones, how you're talking those short passes, that's what those two will give us. This idea about us accessing zone 14 needs to be something we do more of. We can't be doing less than Leicester and expect to sit there and really proceed. So it's frustrating. Maybe we can go from 1 to 11. Quickly. You want to take David Raya?
Yeah, I thought he played really well. I thought he was assured, claiming crosses, no real fault of his own for the goal. There are a few occasions where he was baiting the press, and then he played. There was one, it was in the second half, and he played an amazing ball. I felt myself getting a bit panicked. I'm someone, I've always played as a forward, so for me, when goalkeepers do that, that's kind of like, oh, I've got an opportunity. But he's so good at baiting the press, waiting until the very final moment before playing that ball, and he was very good. Yeah, really good for me.
No, brilliant. I think he was definitely brave in terms of his cross claiming as well. And I think he was coming out well. He was marking his box quite well, and he was getting us started. I thought he did a really good job in terms of being proactive, especially in terms of eliminating some dangerous opportunities when Neto would find some space, or Madueke, and they delivered some dangerous crosses. David Raya was crucial in terms of being able to kind of snuff those chances out. What did you make of Ben White, generally speaking?
A mixed game. Prior to the game, I put out a little tweet just saying that I felt that overlapping was something that we had to do to kind of get the 3 points today.
Yeah.
And it started the game, and he started well. But towards the end of the game, I didn't really see that same overlapping. And maybe it's a fitness thing. I don't know if you would agree, George, or not, but I just felt that we lacked that one outlet. And although Saka at times, he rides challenges. He's unbelievable at retaining the ball. But I just felt that we just need that extra outlet, that extra kind of that difference, essentially. Apart from that, he was quite good. He did the the usual Ben White thing of riling up other players. His yellow card, I thought, was ridiculous. It was crazy to me that whether he's even a foul is beyond me, but to then get a yellow, and I do think sometimes he just treads on thin ice. He's so close to the wire, and I was a bit worried about maybe another yellow with these referees. But on the whole, it was, for me, a relatively average game for Ben.
Yeah, well, you know what? This is actually my frustration. Billy Pryor, again, thanks, mate, for your super chat. It's kind of the time to talk about it. I felt we were narrow. I agree with you. I don't think we made use of spreading the pitch. And, again, I've never been, but I have a look at Stamford Bridge, and it's a small pitch, right? It's really one of those old school kind of stadiums in which you really feel you're on top of the players. And I don't think we did a good enough job about spreading play enough. I felt Chelsea did a really good job at that. I think they were really intent on trying to spread play and trying to open us up a little bit that way, but we felt so congested. The way that we attacked, there was really a lack of width that for me felt disconnected from the usual. And I think we're at our best when we're seeing Ben on those overlaps. And again, we're not there to see what it is fitness wise that's stopping, because we know he's there. He's one of the best in the league at doing that exact thing. So I don't think it's from a lack of ability, but it's more so whether it's fitness or whatnot, we need to find a better job about getting our wingers inside, I think, and in space, because they can't be the wide outlet as well as the central progressor, as well as the finisher, as well as the list needs to stop at some point. They can't be X and Y and Z. And that's our frustration right now. And we're relying on something. Why? Because I think we're looking for inspiration and attack. But maybe we'll run through the team a little bit quicker. For me, Saliba and Gabriel. Saliba, I thought, was incredible, actually. Again, another shining light. I thought in our difficult run here, Saliba's been incredible. And you know what? I don't think it's huge analysis to say, he's somebody that really leads our build up, but the ownership that he has taken has been, I don't know, really helpful for me to kind of see where this team could be and what we need to prioritize, because I don't know if we need to see Thomas Partey dropping into the back line as much as we do. I trust William Saliba to do it. Do we need to be this intent on defensive solidity when we've got somebody like that who can take the ball end to end and really lead your progression? I don't know. And I think typically you've got a defensive midfielder like Thomas Partey who drops out of that area to create space, but then there's no one running into it. So then you've got Declan Rice pushed wide. You've ended up vacating the center from players that would be very high touch. And then you've got a Thomas Partey who had a difficult match. I'll really say really quickly, I felt he struggled out of possession. His pass selection was poor. I think for somebody that was probably our best or most informed player in the last 3-4 weeks, chose a really bad day to have a difficult match for me. But but yeah, mate, and then you move on to like Yuri and Timber. Why don't you talk about Yuri and Timber really quickly? What did you make of him? I thought good in duels and good in moments, and showed some flashes of that running power that makes me excited for his potential in midfield. But do you feel at all, for as great as he is, the angles that suit a left footer on that side mean that our buildup is a little bit predictable in terms of how we're going to create space there with a right footer constantly coming on the inside?
I thought having Ben White today would have actually been a much better opportunity for Timber, kind of entering those areas.
Yeah.
We talk about angles all the time, don't we? Him coming in on his right foot, and although we didn't have Partey at right back today, we still kind of congested that midfield area at times.
Yeah.
It was really interesting because at times we were congested and other times it was completely vacated. It was really bizarre. I haven't seen us like that for quite a while. There was one moment you talked about him driving through midfield. He took it past 3 players and shot, and I instantly thought of you, George. I thought, there we go. There's him playing that left 8 role. I mentioned it earlier with him playing in the first half. He had some really good moments in those channel runs, and it's just frustrating that we know how that left-hand side can open up, especially with Calafiori. And maybe for me, I'm constantly comparing what I know we can be to what we're currently seeing, rather than just looking at the performance in isolation. I don't think he was bad per se. I think he was very good one-on-ones. There were times where, Madueke in particular had some really good crosses, but at the same time, I don't feel that was Timber's fault. I don't think he was at fault for closing down or anything like that. It was just, it wasn't something that he could kind of do personally to mitigate those circumstances.
Look, I think part of the frustration for me is just about balance. And this is where it comes to Mikel a little bit for me. And, he's got to, I think, find a little bit better solutions in terms of his balance. For me, Timber's not at fault for what he can do in terms of the distribution. But I think the way that we set up doesn't allow ourselves to express enough freedom between the lines. And that frustration plays out in the goal for me. I think it's shambolic to concede the way that we did. I think some of our favorite players, including Declan Rice and Thomas Partey, for people that are criticizing Thomas Partey, have a look at the replay. Declan's back in the back line with everybody, not wanting to meet Neto. And I don't think it's a particularly expansive piece of play. The real frustrating thing is we've lost the defensive iron hide that we had last season. I think the manner we're conceding, and I think there's context for the way that things have happened here, but the types of goals that we're conceding, you can't be successful conceding that way. It's a simple slip ball in through for net.
Oh, and George has disappeared. I think he was kind of talking about the midfield pivot. I'll continue while we're waiting for him a minute, but for me, especially on that goal, it was quite obvious that we kind of needed to reshuffle much quicker in the second phase. And then we had both midfielders kind of dropping back to cover for Saliba, opening up that space for Neto. And I think Dr. Hank here. Oh, can I haven't got permission. How ridiculous. I haven't got permissions, guys. Sorry to bring up your comments right now. But Dr. Hank saying about George's phone. I do think George's phone has died. Hopefully he'll be back quite soon. We'll wait and see. I'll kind of continue while we're waiting for him. Any comments, then I'll try to get through your comments as well while we're waiting. Looking at Odegaard next. I think Odegaard had a fantastic first half. He started off slowly. I think the whole team did, to be quite honest. As he grew into the game, our press grew as well. Not only that, but he was one of the only few players creating chances in this match. He was the person orchestrating everything. Saka didn't have his best game, but it was nice that we had the opportunity of having those half-space crosses from Odegaard as well, and not just relying on Saka. Hello, George, you're back.
Sorry. My internet has been all over the place.
And somehow you've managed to get from your car.
Yes. I have finally. I am trying to do data on my laptop here. Um, but yeah, mate. It's been it's been a frustrating day, both in tech and in terms of what we've accomplished here.
So I was just saying, I just kind of mentioned about the goal that I felt that we didn't reshuffle quick enough in the second phase, with
Yeah.
both our centre midfielders kind of dropping back, and then that opened up the space for Neto. Then I briefly touched on Odegaard. How did you feel overall he got on today?
His presence was a lot more than his play, and him being
Yes.
there was a lot more than his play. And we gain a lot of confidence in the way that he is on the pitch. One thing that I noticed immediately, our press looked a lot more assured. And part of the problem is when you've got somebody that's so integral in terms of his communication, so integral in terms of how we rely on him to organize, not just the back line, but also in terms of the triggers. I'm seeing him press, but at the same time wave his hands back to say, "Bakayo, meet me up top, have the cover shadow." That stuff for me was amazing in the first half. I thought on the ball, and I think in moments, he was okay,
Mhm.
uninfluential, but okay. And you expect that after such a long time. But then, mate, around the 70th minute mark, again, I urge people to go back. I think he had a phenomenal last 15, 20 minutes. And that's something you can expect. He's been out for so long. He's going to feel the touch of the game. But he opened up. He opened up, and I thought in terms of what he was able to give us in the final third was definitely a little bit of tempo, was definitely a little bit of nous. And as a whole, I would say maybe the first 50 to 60 minutes, his presence helped us, but maybe himself feeling himself back into play. But then from the 70th minute on, top tier performance.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of his first start, and how many months is that now? Is it 6 weeks at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, impressive to last 90 minutes. It's impressive. It really is.
Yeah, unbelievable. I was so also kind of touching on the fact that it was nice that those half space crosses, we weren't just relying on Saka, who who has been our more or less like our only outlet recently. And it was nice that we had that opportunity. Even when Jesus was kind of forced into action and came on that side, I thought, well, at least we've still got Odegaard in those spaces able to kind of play those half space crosses over towards Marino. We had the chance right near the end as well. Was it Martinelli? It kind of went across to. Um, so I think just having different options and having him there orchestrating things, it just made such a big difference. And I'm sure most people watching the game felt much more comfortable in our performance, knowing that he was going to play. So he's really important for us. He's vital to us. I said it prior to the whole season kicking off. People were talking about, the cover for Saka, and I was arguing that Odegaard for me was the one kind of problem. I think Waneri may have deserved more minutes recently, but I kind of knew that seniority is one thing that Arteta always kind of looks towards. We need him back. We need him fit. It's vital.
Look, you know what the frustrating thing for me is, and this is going to come off as potentially some criticism, but it's really not. The fact that Odegaard is back means that we put players where they're comfortable. Kai Havertz is a center forward. He's not
Yep.
dropping out of those kind of central zones to help out of the pivot, and we've got somebody that's able to receive in the middle third and help progress and give us some tempo. Um, I think I've been very frustrated why Ethan can't do that. I think he fully can. We haven't given him the chance, and we haven't trusted him enough that we should. But the impact that that has means Kai is high. Kai isn't dropping out, and then we don't lack a central reference. We're not looking for Trossard to trap balls against big center backs
Hmm.
because we've got Kai dropping out of the pivot. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
these are things that have a knock-on effect. And the only reason I'm going to talk about a knock-on effect is, for example, Mikel Merino coming into a team not able to show his best stuff high because we don't have a fullback like Calafiori who will drive on, give us that width on the outside, give us that width in the underlap even. It forces Mikel Merino back. That's a knock-on effect. It's a knock-on effect about having Yuri and Timber back there, in terms of receiving on his right foot in those zones. It clogs up build-up. We don't get to see his brilliant passing range as much as we could do maybe on the right or in other areas. So there's been a lot of knock-on effects about this team. A lot of reasons perhaps why we haven't been up to the standard that we've seen of last season. But ultimately a frustrating thing for me. At some point, you do have to look at yourselves, whether it's not just the players, but the manager specifically, in terms of how we're going to balance this team in moments where you don't have your plan A.
Yeah.
That for me is the biggest frustration that I've taken out of this moment. I think in terms of looking too far ahead, you can't at this point. We've left ourselves a hill to climb, and there's no shame in saying that. Whether there's some context for how far we've fallen, whether someone pushed us down the mountain, or whether maybe we walked a little bit because we were tired. There's moments that we take self blame, and then there's moments that I think that maybe some stuff has happened to us that's been unfortunate. But regardless, it's kind of on you to change your own fortune in those moments. And we need to do a better job about finding those solutions. And I think with players coming back, we're going to see a different team. I'm not really afraid of that. But I think my frustrating thing is one of the biggest things I used to tell my players when I coached was respect the game, respect the fundamentals, and earn the right to play. And there's been some of that missing in moments. For example, I look at that second half and I'm left frustrated at the tempo. I'm left frustrated at how fast and how quick we've been able to move the ball. I think Chelsea are there for the taking. They've shown a defense that is weak when you get at them. And I don't think that we did enough, except for maybe after the 70th minute, in terms of really putting some pressure on that back line, especially that left-hand side from Colwill and Cucurella. I thought we could have done a little bit more. Malo Gusto has a good game, sure, no problem, but I think that left-hand side was shaky. I don't think we tested Robert Sanchez enough in terms of what he's shown kind of this season. I think there's a vulnerability there. And it's a level, again, I think, of ultimate frustration because you sat there and I still feel that we could have done more to win. I still feel that we maybe deserved on the balance of play. Cagey game, but I thought we had the better chances. And then ultimately you're sat there saying, well, it's 1 point. We're how many behind Liverpool? We're how many behind City?
Mhm.
And the context of what that 1 point could mean is just a lot more. So the story of this match, why I call it Chelsea heartbreak, is my heart breaks for a team that I feel is taking steps to healing. But do we have time? Have we done enough right now that we have the patience for that? And I don't know. I don't know if we do. And that's really the frustrating part.
Yeah. I don't know where to go from that, George. You've just kind of left me there. I think I'm a little bit older than you. I'm a lot grayer than you. I think PTSD for me is settling in. And that's the problem because expectations have been so high for this team. We have been so close to being perfect over the last 2 years. I think last year, Arteta kind of said it himself that all of the statistics pointed to us winning the league. So we have gone into this season with a squad that I believe are capable of winning the league. I know there's a little bit of discourse in terms of whether we have improved the squad. Maybe we didn't make the transfers that some of us wanted or aspired for. However, if you look at it, although our squad is thin in numbers, the quality is really good. I just feel that we've had so many different variables that we have been unable to manage. You look at the kind of red card incidents, the injuries we've had. We've been unable to field the three midfielders that we've all kind of expected yet. We haven't seen that midfield yet. And it will still take some time because I think Mourinho has to be he needs a transition. And I think right now, Partey today was a little bit of a dip in form, but he has been our most informed midfielder. And until we see our actual team back, I think we need to kind of withhold and just wait before passing, a full judgment on this team. We've got the international break coming up. We know how well Dubai kind of did for us last year. So maybe if we can keep some players off international duty, go on a nice sunny holiday somewhere, come back reinvigorated, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. I mean, frustrating things, you look at the fixtures and they're kind. And you don't doubt, look, this team has shown an ability to run, go on runs. It does. And I think the frustrating thing is I probably would sympathize. And I think maybe fans would sympathize if we saw some more faith in terms of doing some of the right things, in terms of recognizing an Arsenal team. And there's been moments where I don't think we've recognized the team that we're seeing the last 4 or 5 games, and that frustrates. It frustrates because I think we know that we can do better, and there's some better decisions that we can do. Um, but I think we look forward after the international break. I think now's a time for reflection. Now's a time for healing, not just in terms of our own minds and looking at the season, but I think a healing in terms of the squad. It would be nice to have a fit 11. I don't think we've seen a fit 11 that we would like to see. But really quickly, in the last kind of 5 or so minutes, I want to take some questions really quickly from Dr. Hank Venture. Thank you, mate. George, how do you get the volume on your hair like that? I mean, look, mate, all it is I've got good genes, I think. I was blessed with good hair, and Mikel gave me the secrets. That's ultimately what it was. Quick question from Silver Arrows. Do you think stability has been our greatest challenge this season? It's clear we need to attack better, but do we have to withhold some judgment? Where are you at with that, Forder, in terms of how much we can criticize the team for a lack of application in moments, a lack of central access, maybe things like that? Or is it as simple as saying, well, hold on a minute. If you add this kind of injury impact to anybody in the team, do you not think that they're going to lack fluidity, lack a certain moment of ideas? Like, where can you stand on the criticism spectrum?
It's a real nuanced question, isn't it? When you really break it down,
Yeah.
it's so easy to kind of come out and go, well, every team gets injuries. We've seen it in the past, City with De Bruyne, Rodri. We've seen it in the past of Liverpool having, the defenders out, Van Dijk out. However, we haven't just had some injuries to key players. We've had injuries to key players and then injuries on top of that, I would say. So you look at how we ended the match against Liverpool, the back four we were fielding is not the same as coming into a game with a makeshift back four and playing throughout. We came into the game without the back four we wanted and finished with a completely different back four again. So it's things like that. I think Arteta has to kind of take some blame for where we are right now in terms of trusting certain players, playing players out of positions. Whether his hand has been forced is a different matter. We can't legislate for some of the decisions we've had against us. But however, I would have to say that's going to happen along the lines, throughout the season. As Arsenal fans, we've seen it plenty of times. We never kind of get the rub of the green with any of the decisions. So stability is probably our greatest challenge. But regardless, we've got to get 3 points each and every week now. There's no time for excuses. It's for us to kind of move on.
I'm a big fan of giving the advice where if things aren't going for you, find a way. Find a way. And if you want to be successful, you find a way. And, I think success is never given. There's a level of entitlement that I've seen of expectation. And some of that comes from the PTSD of not winning as a club for so long. But there was a level of it would be easy if it is going to be easy because Rodri is out for the season. It is going to be easy. And I don't think success is ever easy. There's definitely some stuff that we haven't done. We have to look at ourselves. Again, I say look at the international break as a chance to look at yourselves to improve. When people are asking, like, what kind of a run do you have to go on? Well, the run that we had post-January seemed kind of nice. And you put that Arsenal team wins the league. And you do something like that. And that team's there. It's not that it's not there. That team is there. We need to find it again. And we need to find it quickly. And I think part of that has to come with a little bit more purposeful movement in the center of the pitch. So I'll be really specific. I think that we need to do a better job of creating space in the middle of the park. That means that we're not asking our strikers and our front two to drop out of the pivot. I think we need to be in those zones, happy to receive. We need to create better width. That can't come from the outlets that you want to kill teams. Let them kill the teams and create width in other players. Don't ask them to be everything. And I think let's strike a better balance of behind the ball players and players ahead of the ball. I think we do those three things, and I think we're going to win more matches. We're going to gain more points and have more confidence. those are some things that I want to see in terms of specific principles from the team moving forward. And before we head out, Brian Holiday, again, thanks, mate, for your super chat. And thanks, guys, everybody, for sticking with us. I know it's been a really difficult match. Tough to come on these instant reactions, let alone with no internet. But it's tough to come on them when you're feeling this type of way. But we really appreciate everybody that's been here. Make sure you guys run the likes up if you can, and comment, please, as always. But Brian Holiday says, this team looks exhausted. They all have the 1,000-mile stare. We need reinforcements. You know what we need? Those runners, the little electrolyte packs that you can kind of pick up at checkpoints. And that could be from Dubai. Who knows? Maybe that's what they're getting in Dubai. But we definitely need somebody.
Something.
We need a new voice. We need some injection. And I think we'll talk about January. We'll talk about the impact of all this stuff. But first off, Order, mate, thank you so much for sticking with me. Maybe you can just shout out kind of where everybody can find you, and maybe give me your last thoughts on the game ultimately.
Oh, thanks for having me on, George, because just so everyone knows, this is the first time George and I have actually been able to talk to each other. We never do. A text here and there, but nothing any further. So you can catch me, my thumbnails on here quite often on the TCP live on a Thursday.
They're
You can
brilliant.
catch me on my channel. Thanks, mate. A hobby that's turned into something more. But yeah, you can catch me on my channel, which is Forder on Football on YouTube. You can catch me on TikTok or on Twitter on Forder on Footy. And no, I will be honest. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to come on. I am sweating buckets, George, especially when you've cut out and disappeared, and I'm just here on the Cannon podcast on my own. So yeah, I do appreciate everyone sticking around, because
We
it
like to
hasn't been
throw
an easy
you
day
into the
for
deep
us.
end. We like to throw you into the deep end for sure. No, mate, you're brilliant. It's been incredible. And guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. Ran a little bit longer this time, but I felt like we needed the therapy. I cut out a little bit, and I appreciate every one of you guys sticking with us. Again, this is going to be a difficult thing for us to get through. I think that we need to stick together. The team needs to do things to improve. I think we've highlighted some specific things that the team maybe can do, but ultimately, one thing is they need our support. And I think sometimes that can seem like you're avoiding responsibility, but you're not. We can talk about these problems, and we'll break them down on the Monday pods, and we'll break them down on pods to come. But I do think that if we are going to be successful this season, we need to look at ourselves. We need to take ownership. We need to not blame certain things, and we need to try to find a way to change our fortunes, because no one's going to give you success. It's not as simple as saying you're owed it because you're good or you've done a good amount of sample and hard work. No one wants it. And everybody wants what you want. And so you've ultimately got to be yourself. You've got to find a way to get back to that kind of form that we've seen. We know this team can be. And let's earn the right to play. And I think we do those things. I think we'll be seeing a different team. Let's put it that way. So again, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. Thank you so much for kind of being there to talk through this difficult time. I hope you guys are all well. Hope you guys enjoy what's left of your weekend. And thanks for keeping it Arsenal.